I'm Grant Newhold, Creative Director of the Media Center, in case you didn't know that. And you're here to learn some stuff about smartphones and how to produce video from them. And I should say it's not just smartphones. It should say smart device, because this is not limited to phones. Tablets will also be an actual tool that you can use, an iPad or something like that. I can't speak too much of that just because I don't produce off of a tablet. I produce off of a phone. But know that a lot of this is transferable information that will actually be utilized on a tablet as well, if that's more of what you have and you're more comfortable using one of those. So first things first, you have to figure out, do you have enough room on your phone to do any of this? So my phone, I'm lucky to have a 128 gigabyte iPhone 7. Before that, I don't think they came to this kind of size. And that can be a big limiting factor for you if you're trying to produce video and you can't even shoot enough video to get on your phone to start with. So space allocation is really important. So I would recommend, if you're going into a project, trying to clear out a lot of old photos or other things that you can stand to get rid of, back those up on some kind of web service like a Google Photos or Dropbox or anything like that.
Or just put in a new SD card.
Or, as I say, Androids down here allow for SD cards. Thanks for jumping the gun there, Steve, on us. But so the more flexibility you'll have based on your space. So that's something that I know is a limiting factor. When I've taught this class at the school, one of the main things, kids are like, I don't have any space on my phone. So we got to take time and go through what apps can you stand to live without, and start deleting those apps. Apps start to take up a lot of space. And then photos that they've had on there since they've had the phone that they're like, oh, I don't need that anymore. So you start clearing all that space out to allow yourself room to shoot video and do editing. Yes, sir?
So my Android says RAM size 4 gig, ROM size 32 gig. What does that mean in terms of how much memory I've got available?
So like the memory, like RAM is like the speed of.
I get RAM and ROM.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. Is that
it should say capacity on there. I'm not an Android person, so maybe Mike could jump in. Do you know what it says?
That should be 32 gig storage.
Of the ROM.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. 32 gigs, which is quite a bit. That's a lot to work with.
That's pretty average for Android phones.
Okay.
Okay, so I got 32 gig I can put my video on, or I got to look at what I've got in that 32 gig already.
Yeah, that's going to be including everything you have already on there.
So that's what free space allows?
Yeah, the total amount of storage
is 32 gigs.
Less than that free.
So Android doesn't show you what's free space?
You can.
Or it does?
Go into the,
okay, there's other settings for that. Okay.
That was the question. What other settings? Storage.
There should be storage somewhere in there. So I'm glad you brought that up. You want to go in. There you go. Okay. Yes, there you go. Great, thank you. And by the way, I should have said right away, if you have questions as we go, just like that I'm not covering, and then more of those things might be in the Android world because I'm not an Android user. So thank you for asking those questions. You need to be able to find where to check for your free space, and that's going to be in your settings menu somewhere, and dig through there and look for storage and be able to try to look for what is free and available storage. That will allow you to know how much video that you can actually shoot and capture. And so if you're wondering, okay, I have so much free space, but how much does that allow me to actually capture? That's where I put kind of a good default in there for what space takes up on your phone when you're shooting video. So most phones come in shooting default of 1080p 30 frames a second. That's a very video term. We're going to talk about that size here in just a little bit on that graph. But basically, you can shoot for about 1 minute and fill up 130 megabytes of space. Now, what does that mean whenever you're shooting and you're looking at gigabytes? You know, you might have so many gigabytes free. What does that translate into minutes shot? So this is a default setting kind of size, and most of you probably haven't messed around with changing the sizes a lot of what your phones came to shoot with. So that's probably a pretty good benchmark to know that you can shoot for 7.5 minutes and take up 1 gigabyte of storage on your phone, which is Quite a bit. It depends on what you're producing, but 7.5 minutes of footage, that's quite a bit of footage. But again, depending on what you're producing. So that's kind of a benchmark of knowing how much size that you may need on your phone, because that's again where you have to start in order to understand what you're even capable of doing on your device. Yes, sir.
So would that be something that I could just drop onto YouTube if I did 5 minutes of video and could just drop it onto YouTube? Or
Yeah, you could upload it and
right size and everything?
yeah, you could upload it to there. Yeah, that's a very compatible size. Yeah, that's a very default compatible size with that. Yep. So the question was asked, could he just dump that footage to YouTube? The answer is yes, because then you could just go pull it from there eventually. But we're going to talk about trying to do everything start to finish on your phone rather than having to go to a computer. That, of course, is an option if you want to just use this as a recording device and not an editing device. But today's class is mostly about doing everything start to finish from this device. Okay, jumping back to what some of that I was talking about, 1080. When I say the words 1080. They're frame sizes, basically resolution sizes, and you can see here in those the boxes that we have kind of the scale of what those numbers mean. So we're looking at a widescreen frame here, what you're typically used to seeing as a display in wide frame, and those are the aspect ratios in pixels. And so the 1920 by 1080 is a very high definition image. There's a lot of pixels, a lot of information, a lot of clarity in that size of image. There's also a lot of clarity in a 1280 by 720 image. That's still considered high definition. It still looks really good on most devices, especially ones that are a little bit smaller. But a 720 image on a screen that size would still look pretty good. I'm going to show you an example video if it'll load. A little bit later on that was shot in that frame size rather than the big frame size. I don't even know if some phones will go lower than that much, but when you get lower than 1280 by 720, you're now in standard definition. Things will start to get a little bit fuzzy. You won't have nice, crisp, clean edges. Facial features won't be as discernible, things like that. So try to shoot, I don't know, again, all phones are a little different, but I would try to shoot not anything under 1280 by 720 pixels. And you'll see some of those numbers as you're scrolling through settings of your phone, of your camera. Some of those numbers you'll start to see and understand that you can switch between those. But as a default, again, you're probably shooting in the HD TV 1920 by 1080 aspect ratio, which is very good high definition video. Okay? Any questions on that? I know that those numbers and stuff can be kind of foreign to people. I hope you understand it enough to know that's very good quality video all the way down to it's not going to look that good if you're shooting in smaller sizes. So if you think, oh, I can shoot at a smaller size and save room on your phone, that is correct, but just know you're giving up some clarity in your image when you do that. All right. So enough about all of that. Let's talk about starting to shoot some video. I put a couple notes right up front that I thought were important for me to at least mention. There are third-party camera apps that give you more control over your camera. By default, the cameras that come on your phone, the apps that come on your phone as a camera, they're fairly good. But if you want to go real nitty-gritty on all the little details of film, so this would be more if you're looking at cinematic type of things and not just pretty standard video, you might want to look into a third-party app rather than a default app on your phone. I'm not going to go into those. I mentioned one iPhone top recommended because I know of it. It's called Filmic Pro. It's like a $10 app, I want to say, and it gives you a lot of control over your camera. So I'm not going to go into a lot of those details, but I did want you guys to just be aware that there are actual third-party apps for camera. Also, most phone cameras have a better back camera rather than a better front camera, but this is starting to really change. I was very impressed when I got my iPhone 7 how well the front camera performed. Because I typically wouldn't do video, like I wouldn't set up video and be able to see myself and do a video like that because I knew the front camera wasn't as good. So I would set up a shot like that even if I had to come around and look at it just because I knew the back camera was better. Now, with my iPhone 7, I'm very pleased with the front camera. But I did want to make a notation in there that most phones do have a better back camera than a front camera. So I just wanted to make that as a note for you guys. And now, the cardinal rule of shooting and producing video, I put it in red. This is the cardinal rule of shooting video on your phone. Turn it sideways. A lot of people's instincts are to film just because you hold your phone like that and to film things like this. But if you think about watching any kind of content on a screen like that, what does that leave? A bunch of black on a side like that. It works well whenever somebody's just watching your video on another phone device. That can work okay. But if you want to take it to any other platform device, oh yes, I always forget about the lights. We should find a way to switch that off on Mondays here so that we don't lose lights after 6 o'clock on Mondays. But like when people have shot video and they bring it to me and they've shot it like that and they want me to do something like that and I put it into a program that is used to working with video that is wide, I'm left with nothing but black on the sides. So video needs to be shot horizontally in order to fill up a screen like that a lot of people could be consuming your content on. And so like when I watch videos even on this device, I always want to turn it and get it just a little bit wider because that's the way screens are mostly designed to give you that content in a wide format. So that's why I make it the cardinal rule, just because vertical video is very amateur and kind of hard to watch because you're losing so much possibility of your image based on the black on the left and right sides. So turn that phone sideways and shoot video sideways. And then the home button, this is just to practice. You can do it either way, but it's good practice to put the home button on the right side. That'll orient just the way it's supposed to. You can flip that kind of stuff later if you shoot it like that, and maybe some of your phones and default or your editing programs might kind of orient that for you originally or in post. But I would just say as a rule, just practice turning your phone to where the home button is on the right side whenever you're shooting that video. Okay? All right. So got some of that house cleaning stuff out of the way. Now we're going to talk about, the actual production. Stability, I put this right away. Stability is key. And why that is because it's hard to watch shaky videos. When footage should not shake or have movement, it's very frustrating to see. Like if I was just filming something that all I needed to do is just stand there and hold that. I mean, I could do it, but it makes a lot more sense to put it on something like a tripod and let that just be a stable shot instead of, especially if you're going to be there for a while, you're just going to see shake that you don't need to see. So I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of some of the equipment that we recommend and why this makes such a big difference when producing video. Depending on what your shot is, I mean, you could go on for a long time or even just a short manner, but either way, it doesn't need to shake. So as easy as it is to set up a tripod, especially one this lightweight that I can move around, you might as well do that. I already have this connected on here onto the plate, but this is just a little attachment that holds your phone. That screws right onto the plate of the tripod and then locks in. So then it becomes kind of one piece of equipment that way. And then all I have to do, since it's spring-loaded, is just put my phone in it. And already I have a really good, stable shot ready to go. And so this tripod can adjust height and get you a really good image, especially if you're doing like some kind of standing, talking shot. Especially if you're doing production by yourself, you really got to have something like this. So you're not like trying to lean your phone up against something and getting a weird angle or something. You get a nice tripod that can give you a good shot. Makes all the world of difference. So stability, I put that as key because it just makes professionalism already that you have a nice stable shot. People don't put enough emphasis and stock into having a good stable shot. But I will tell you, it as a professional, it makes all the world of difference between my videos if I have shake versus some stability. I lost my place here. I don't know why it left me. But the other part of having a tripod allows you to do some very basic camera movements that you would do with any camera, which is pan tilt. So panning is left and right, and tilting is up and down. And what's nice is you can do some shots that look really professional even with a very basic tripod like this, because you can do them nice and subtly. I put in there slow, consistent movements make for good footage. So if you're like filming at an event or showing maybe there's a piece of something on a desk that you want to showcase, just a nice little slow pan of that can make a world of difference just to add some motion into your footage. But it's nice, slow, consistent motion and not some of this unnecessary jerky stuff that I'm talking about avoiding. So that's what a tripod also allows for. It allows for a nice steady shot, but it also allows for you to get nice, slow moving shots as needed. And then I put in, so pan, tilt, and lockdown shots you get from a tripod. But I put in there to never use the zoom focus zoom feature on your device, which means basically taking two fingers and scaling up. The zoom's in. That is a digital zoom that distorts the image and gets really blurry. So if you need to get closer, move it closer and don't just zoom in. I know sometimes you might be at an event and there's a fence and you can't get any closer. But if you can physically get closer to your subject that you're shooting, just do that. Don't pinch and zoom, because then you're going to lose quality in your image because you're actually using a digital zoom that's distorting the image. So I put in there to never do that. Just move closer to your subject. But again, I know sometimes you're going to be limited and you really want to get a little closer to that subject and there's some kind of barrier or something you can't. That would be the only time I would say it's semi-acceptable to do that, but otherwise just take the device and get it closer to the subject, okay? So that was one of the things I wanted to emphasize. Again, makes a big difference in quality. When motion is required, so sometimes your subject might be moving around or you need to move around your subject for some reason. So if we're doing some kind of tour and somebody's walking around a house and showing it off, maybe you're in real estate and you want to do a marketing video where you're showing off a house, that's going to be hard to do without any kind of motion. You're going to want to maybe follow the realtor through the house. Well, just try to, when you do those kind of things, try to maintain concentration on not having any unnecessary shake, because there's going to be some when you're moving, but trying to limit that and trying to be as smooth as possible. So sometimes when I shoot video with this, I always use two hands, and I just try to move as smoothly as I can. So I'm really concentrated on this not having extra motion. And so it's a concentration thing, and you're trying to put a lot of emphasis into being stable. So and what's nice is my iPhone 7 has some motion stabilization built into it. They've come a long ways, and phones are only going to get better. That's why I think these courses are important. So you're trying to make your body smooth. You're trying to hold your camera steady, your phone steady, and making sure you're minimizing any movement that you don't need, just the movement that you have to follow a subject with. The other thing is there's handheld gimbal stabilizers that you could basically set your phone in. It's a kind of a stick here that can do some of that stabilization for you, so you can walk around. I have it listed here when we talk equipment. I'll pull that up and show you. But basically, it takes a lot of that motion of you moving out of the equation. And so if you know you're going to do a lot of moving shots, maybe whatever you're doing a travel blog, and you know you're going to be walking through the streets of something, doing video that way, and you know you're going to do a lot of that, it might be worth the investment. I think it's $100 for the gimbal that I'm recommending to go ahead and invest in that equipment, because it's going to take your video quality way up to the next level just because you have nice, smooth, fluid shots, and that makes a big difference in video production. Okay. So that's whenever you do have to move, and then so we're just going to keep rolling on right on down to shooting for the edit. So whenever I go out to shoot footage, I know that I'm going to get way more footage than I actually end up needing in my video. I was just having a conversation right before this about I was in Mineola today shooting footage for a 30-second video, and I shot for 2 hours. And I'm probably going to use about 15 to 20 seconds of that video because it's all going to be in slow motion. So you shoot a lot of video in order to get pared down to the exact shots that you need. So you want to shoot a wide variety of shots in order to keep your viewer interested. Keep that video dynamic, so you're seeing a lot of wide shots, a lot of mediums, close-ups. So a wide shot, for instance, would be seeing everybody in this room in one shot. That'd be a big wide shot, so we can kind of establish the size of this class. And then I might want to do a medium shot where I'm just on these two. And then I might want to do a close-up. So that's what I'm talking about in the difference of variety. So you kind of give your viewer a whole sense of what's happening, but also you can kind of bring them right in tight to the action. So maybe it's something where you're in a classroom, you see all these kids, and then you come all the way down to where you can see what the kid is writing on their paper. So that's wide all the way down to extreme close-up. So just get yourself a wide variety of those type of shots, and it depends on the kind of video that you're producing, but that's kind of a general rule in producing video is whenever you go out to get footage, give yourself a lot to work with and give yourself a lot of variety, because that's going to make a better video for your viewer to sit and watch because you're mixing it up. So that's just kind of a general rule for video. It doesn't really relate specifically to phones, but I felt like it was important for you guys to be practicing that. Shoot as much footage as you feel is relevant to your topic, and then shoot some more. That's a good rule, because it's like, oh, I probably have enough. No, go ahead and shoot some more. Make sure you have more than you're going to use. Again, that comes down to the capacity of your phone. How much can you actually put on your phone? But I recommend any chance you get to shoot a little bit more than you think you need, because it's hard to come back to a certain thing and reshoot it if you're lacking. So, and it gives more variety to, if you only have a couple of shots, that doesn't do you a lot of good for your viewers. It's important that you gather enough footage to visually show the viewer a clear picture of your subject. So thinking about the entire process of whatever you're trying to show, maybe you want a couple angles of each thing that you're trying to show, because that gives you a lot of freedom in the edit, but also gives your viewers a lot to see in order to help see what you're trying to show them. Okay, so shooting, I'm moving right on down to shooting in slow motion. I was just talking about shooting in slow motion today. Most phones, again, I can't speak for all of them, and I bet this is going to struggle to load, but I'm going to click on it and see if it will do it. Most phones these days come with the option to shoot in slow motion. That's weird. And I like this feature quite a bit, and I'll see if this will load up here, but I'll kind of keep going. Just so we're not waiting on it forever, and talk about why shoot in slow motion. You can create a very dramatic effect. Slow-mo, especially if you put the right music to it, could be really, really dramatic. Or to just capture action that's happening in a pretty fast motion that you want to be able to slow down and really show your viewers what's taking place. So that's just, again, a general rule of slow motion and how it can be used. But it's pretty cool that you can actually shoot slow motion stuff on phones these days. I was really excited when that feature came about on my phone here. So I will see if this will play. It might just buffer the whole time. And it's just a quick couple of shots that I put together of my daughters, and I shoot stuff of them in slow motion all the time just because I feel like it looks cool. So, yeah, I was worried about this. We'll give that a second, and we'll just keep talking about some of this difference, and we'll probably hear some maybe music taking off and playing in the background. But something to consider about shooting slow motion is most of the time you give up some of your frame size in order to have higher frames per second. And I know that can maybe get a little bit confusing for you. I tried to put some of those numbers out there again for you. Anytime you see FPS, that's frames per second. That's how many pictures basically in 1 second of video that there are. And that's how you get good slow motion, is you pack a lot of pictures into 1 second and you get good, smooth, fluid slow motion. So you want to shoot at a higher frames per second rate if you want to use slow motion, because it'll play back so much smoother. And so that's why you want to up your FPS when you're talking slow motion, but sometimes when you do that, you have to give up some of your size capabilities. Now that's getting less and less of a thing. Mike, you have what phone?
The Note 8.
Do you know what by chance that it shoots?
I think it's 60.
60 frames per second?
Yeah.
So my phone will actually do, I put numbers on here for the iPhone, and my phone will actually do the 1920, the big image, at 120 frames per second. Now, we talked earlier, but 30 frames per second is kind of the default. So you can imagine how many more frames per second you're actually shooting based on the default. And then you can go all the way up to 240 frames per second on the iPhone. And I know the Galaxy S9 just came out, and it was like 960 frames per second or something crazy. They were demoing some of that at the Oscars last night on the red carpet. You could go and see them like like their gowns and stuff flowing in super slow motion shot on the Galaxy S9. I'm not trying to do a commercial for them or anything right now, I promise. But it's just crazy that phones are getting to that point. But anyway, higher frames per second is going to give you a lot smoother slow motion. You might have to sacrifice frame size and some of that. Let's see if this ended up loading at all. Probably not, since I didn't hear any music. Yeah, let me just do that. Let that download in the background maybe. Come back to it at some point. Again,
Can you shoot a regular speed and slow it down later?
you can, but it'll look pretty choppy. Because what you're seeing is all those individual frames start to take place. And that's why when you have a ton of those frames, you don't see all that motion that's happened whenever the frame wasn't getting captured.
I just wanted to know that it does 240 frames.
Yours does? 240. Yeah. Yeah. So you can slow things down at a normal speed, and it'll still work as slow motion, but it won't look as smooth. This is something that it took me a while to kind of figure out and learn and know that I can shoot stuff in higher frames per second, and I don't have to slow it down. But that gives me the option of slowing it down. So like today, shooting Mineola, I shot everything at a minimum of 60 frames per second. And that's going to give me a lot of options. I don't have to slow all of those shots down, but when I do slow those shots down, I know they're going to look really good. Okay. Let's see if it'll just open. Well, I'll keep going. It might show up later. We can come back to it. I just don't want to hold up a lot of the class waiting on technology. This is, again, some of that prep that wasn't done ahead of time for you. So anyway, anybody have any questions on slow motion? I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of the slow motion capabilities, because you never know when you might want them. And you could do something specifically because you know that slow motion capabilities exist. We're going to talk about taking control of the focus and exposure a little bit. By default, when we pull up our cameras, they do a really good job, most cameras do, of understanding the light that we have and exposing for that, and understanding where we want some of our focus to be based on what's in our shot. So as I hold this up to you guys, my phone's starting to search, and it's highlighting all of your faces. It's gotten a little box around there, so it's like, okay, there's a face, I better focus on that. But sometimes your camera or your phone gets a little too smart, and it thinks, oh, I want to focus on that. But you're like, no, I actually want to focus on this. So it's good to be able to take control over your device for focus and exposure. Because exposuring is one of those things, which is your light coming in, that if it fluctuates during your shot, it would be really off-putting to your viewer as they see like exposures getting changed as you're trying to watch somebody on camera. So it's good to take control over that so it's not constantly adjusting for those things. The way to do it on, for sure, iPhone, I can't speak to much other phones, unfortunately. I need to get myself more rehearsed in what Android offers, is you literally just tap, push and hold on the screen, and it'll take a second and it'll lock that focus in on wherever you pushed. And now once I do that and I swipe up, I'm adjusting my exposure. You can see how that gets super bright. I should have brought this ready to do that. And then I can pull down, and now I'm darkening that exposure. So if I want to expose for that screen, I need to pull way down, and now I can see the words on that screen. Rather, when I push that up, it just blows it all out. So that's part of taking control over that exposure and also focus. If I say I want that in focus, I'm going to push and hold. My phone's going to find it. It's going to lock it in. And now when I move around, it's still in focus, and the camera's not constantly jittery and jumpy and trying to find focus. So taking control over those things gives you a lot of a higher possibility of getting exactly the shot you want instead of letting the phone kind of wig out and give you some stuff that you don't really want.
So if that's something that you're, like, say you're videoing yourself on the iPad, but you're maybe going to be moving around in the shot, is it better?
That's kind of tricky. I would probably try to minimize, depending on how much movement you would do as far as to and from the camera. Side to side, that's not going to be near as much of an issue. If that is something that you are going to be doing by yourself, and you know you'll be coming to and from the camera quite a bit, I would probably leave it in autofocus. Just because once you set that focus and you move out of it, you're guaranteed to be out of focus. Whereas the phone's going to refine that focus based on you and where you're at in its depth.
So as long as you're staying in one spot, as much movement as you do in that one spot, that's not.
Yeah, you would want to lock down manual focus on that, because that way your phone's not constantly maybe trying to find that focus. If you know you're going to be in a single location for the most part, I would lock that down. But if you know you're going to be moving enough and you're shooting by yourself, I'd probably still leave it in auto, just for the sake of it's going to give you a better chance of being in focus more than if you set it in manual in one spot and then move. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so I talked about all of that. Now, consider lighting, because again, these cameras are pretty good, but they're not very good in low light, and they're for sure not good if your subject, say, is standing in front of that big window right there and it's middle of the day. So you want to place your subject in a place where lighting is not an issue for you. Now outside, you got to try to manipulate the sun a little bit. You don't want necessarily the sun right in somebody's face, but you don't want the sun right here, because then they'll just be completely dark. So you have to consider, okay, what kind of lighting is going to give me my best shot here, and try to manipulate your light source that you have. Now if you're just indoors, you know, the top lights that you have, hopefully they're bright enough that it gives you enough light to work with. Again, phones do a pretty good job. But I would try to say supplement as much light. Get your subjects in places where you have a lot of light, that your camera's not struggling and kind of getting grainy because there's just so much light, so little light to work with. So you definitely have to consider light when you're trying to create professional video. But your phone's going to do a pretty good job of trying to maximize its capabilities based on the light environment that you're in. But you have a lot of control over where you shoot and how you place subjects in order to help that cause quite a bit. We're going to talk about that at the very end when I talk about specifically setting up an interview, but I wanted to go over it. If you are shooting outdoors and you want to get kind of cinematic looks, the morning time or the evening light is the best time to do that. Shooting in the midday sun, you get just a lot of flat, bright light that doesn't really have a lot of good depth because there's not a lot of good shadows. So if you're wanting to shoot anything outdoors, try to do that at times early in the morning or a couple hours before sunset, and you're going to get some really great light. Again, considering where you place your subjects in that light, but that's a good rule. We call that the golden hours because your light is so nice and gold. It gives you a lot of rich look. I said avoid midday, and I said most phones don't perform well in low light, although I know that's a strong emphasis on manufacturers and their cameras, and they're trying to get better and better at producing good quality images in low light. And I know that, again, the S9, I've heard some talks already about how well that's performing in low light. So it's coming about to where that's not going to be near as much of an issue, but it's still something to consider whenever you're wanting to capture good quality images and video, to not have that and be in low light. I'm going to keep rolling right along here. Now, most likely your video is going to incorporate some kind of audio. You might have some kind of video where you know everything you shoot is going to have a music bed and you never need the actual audio from the video footage that you're getting. But most of the time when you produce video, a lot of the time I should say, is you're going to need some kind of audio coming into your video from your source, if that's you doing on-camera stuff or you're interviewing somebody, or maybe you're on a hunt and you want to hear the birds and all the nature sounds. You want to capture good audio. And I think I put it on there, yeah, your note. Capturing quality audio for your video is the best way to add a professional edge. So a video could have a pretty, it could be out of focus, and if the audio is still really good, that's going to kind of salvage some of your video. Just because there's something about good quality audio in video that makes it so much more professional. And if you've ever watched videos that have bad audio, then you know exactly what I'm talking about, where if it sounds like somebody's across the room. The image might be really clear, but if I wasn't wearing this microphone and we were just going off the microphone that's on the camera, it would make a huge difference in the quality of the video that we're doing. That's why I wear a microphone up here, is because it makes a huge difference. It brings the viewer in instead of feeling like you're across the room when you're watching them. So I recommend, let me make sure I'm going down my right notes here. The internal mics are getting much better, for sure. And when you do use that, and if that's the only thing you have to do, just try to maintain some kind of close proximity to whatever your audio source is. If it's somebody talking on camera, don't get across the room and expect any kind of good audio. But if you're doing some kind of selfie blog, you might get away with a pretty good quality video just because your microphone's right here. That's not too far, and the internal microphones have gotten so much better that I was actually really surprised when I got this that they can produce that kind of quality audio with inside a phone. But external mics are the way to go. Again, that's why I'm wearing this one, is because it brings your audio to a whole nother level. And you can utilize those on phones these days. I did not bring one of those Mike, would you mind running in that room and grabbing one of the Boya microphones? There's probably a couple laying on the desk somewhere.
So is that thing Bluetooth or what?
No, this is wireless. It's like just transmitting back to a receiver back there. We're not doing anything off of this for phones right now. This is higher end level video production stuff. But I'm going to show you some equipment that you can get for phones that still does very, very similar stuff. Thank you so much. I meant to bring that up. You can get wireless systems that then you can plug into phones, yeah. They're just going to be more expensive. When you go to wireless stuff, and especially if anything of decent quality, you're going to get what you pay for when it comes to that. But that's why I think this is a really, really good solution, is because you can notice that the cable is so long. And that allows you to get separation if you need it from your camera source and still get really good audio. This plugs right into a phone and records into your phone. Now, iPhone 7 users, I put it in red again because it's one of those things you got to know. i7 and up, you have to have the dongle. And if you're a user of that, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you have to have a lightning port to a headphone jack, which is, I will have to say, is really, really annoying and frustrating. One of those things that I'm like, almost not an Apple user because of it. Because I get in certain scenarios, and if I don't have this does me no good. I can remember this piece, and I can have my phone, and if I leave this at home, this piece is no good to me anymore. So that's very frustrating as an iPhone user. That's why I always keep these right there on that. But if you're not an iPhone user, this plugs right into your headphone port, and this is a smart jack, so it actually recognizes that you're plugged into a smartphone or smart device and will record using this microphone that you can then clip onto yourself, just like I'm doing here. So I've produced quite a few videos on my phone utilizing this, and it works really well because then you can string the cable all the way down. As long as you don't shoot a super wide shot, you're never going to see all this extra cable. You're just going to see the subject. And it's been proven to be really, really effective. So we're going to talk equipment down the road just here in a little bit, but when you're talking about external microphones, they're very feasible to utilize. And there's also microphones that are called condenser microphones that will plug right into your phone that kind of attach off to the side of your phone. And so again, if you're doing selfie blogs, it's a way to really increase the audio off of having, so you have an actual professional source versus relying on the internal microphone. So it's just a different style of microphone that you can get that plugs into your phone. Again, you still have the issue with lightning port stuff on some of the devices that I found. They're not compatible with plugging right into your iPhone 7 and up because they're made to plug right into your headphone jack and hold on to your phone as a clip. I have found one that I think is really, really good that is specifically made for the lightning port, but it's almost $100 more than the other version that I found that has just the regular jack. Typical. What's that?
Lightning or USB-C?
Lightning for this. Lightning port. You don't.
Older iPhones use Lightning. The 7 and newer, I think, uses a USB Type-C.
Well, anytime I do something and I say lightning port and I get this, it works with that. So it might be a language thing. This works for me. It's called, and the stuff that I find is called lightning. So I could be wrong. We can look into that. That would be a good thing to follow up and check and make sure I'm not giving out bad information.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How many people are using iPhones? Raise your hand. How many people are using Android? Oh, it's about 50-50, okay. So my Android doesn't have a plug anymore. So I got this selfie stick, and it had a plug, and it couldn't plug in. So I got a different selfie stick, and I don't know if it's Bluetooth, but it triggers the
Oh, okay.
camera when I push
The only plug-in we have is the charging thing, the USB-C thing right there.
Okay. So great. I'm glad you bring that up because I need to develop more into the Android world since I'm not a super Android user and understand what your limitations or capabilities are based on only having that port as
So
well.
for you other Android users, I hope you don't end up with an extra selfie stick like I did.
What phone are you using?
This is a Motorola.
Motorola Droid. And are you guys on Android Galaxy stuff?
No.
And you have the headphone jack still that allows it for all that? Okay. Okay. That's good to know. That's good to know. So there's some issues with some of that stuff that I'm talking about if you don't have that headphone jack. And that's changing, you know, and manufacturers are trying to keep up with some of those trends so they're not losing 50% of their market. But it's hard to be compatible with everything.
Where do you look for your mics at?
Amazon. I will show you all the links that I have here in just a second. So you might have a microphone laying around that plugs into like a camcorder headphone port. Those will not work direct from if they're made for a camcorder and plug into a smartphone. You actually have to make those smart by using an adapter that turns it into a smartphone plug. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. I've linked the adapter, of course, too. But if you do have an old lavalier microphone or some kind of microphone that, this has a 3.5 headphone jack on it, I'll plug it right in my phone, that'll work. And the way to tell that, in case you're wondering, is most headphone jacks have 2 little black lines. And that's not the smart ones, whereas the smart ones have 3 little black lines on there. And that is basically how you know it's a smart jack. So you might kind of keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. All right, getting into editing. I'm not going to go into super depth about this because, again, we have a split class, and I don't want to show off, a bunch of iMovie stuff that's not going to work for any of the Android users. So what I've done, and if you want this outline, I put that on the very front page of this. If you want this digital copy where all these links that I've put in there will actually be clickable for you, I had no way of doing that, of course, in a print version. What I've done is I've went out and I've searched and I've found what I feel is some of the best tutorials to show you how to use these apps. Because that's a whole nother process in its own, and I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense in a class scenario like this for me to walk you through all of those editing things whenever you could go watch somebody that will tell you how to do it a whole lot better than I will. But I just wanted to hit on some of your options for editing and what maybe your limitations and stuff to those could be. So again, those links are there. I also wanted to include some of the app size. So again, we talked about capacity on your phone. I was really surprised to find out, and I probably shouldn't be because again, it's an Apple thing, but how much bigger the iMovie app itself that comes preloaded on iPhone, at least I knew at one point it came preloaded on iPhone 6 and later, but you can download for free in the App Store as an iPhone user. How big it is as an app. It's 670 megabytes, just the app itself. So again, if you're having space limitations, just note that. But it is free to use, and it's really robust, and that's what I do all of my smartphone video production editing in is iPhone because I have it, and it's free. And but as I started doing more development for this class and learning what else is out there, I found another one that I'm really interested in, which is the next one that comes on both iPhone and Android, is called Kinemaster. And this might be one of the top-of-the-line apps out there for videography and production on a smart device. The reason of that is because it allows for a lot of layering. And when I produce videos, I use a lot of layers. So I might need a layer for a graphic, a layer for footage, and a layer for audio, and a layer for, a bunch of different layers inside of editing allows for a lot more capability. And you can do 2 layers inside of iPhone. So I can have a video running, and I can put a picture over the top of that video or another video, a picture-in-picture style. Maybe I have 2 images going on at the same time. I can do up to 2 in iMovie. Kinemaster allows for quite a bit more. I don't remember what their ceiling was. But then they also have just some other very fine-tuned editing stuff, color grading and some of that allows for higher control, more robust editing capabilities. Now, downside of that, you can use that app all you want for free. But everything you put out is going to have their watermark on it. It's going to say in the top right-hand corner, made with Kinemaster or something like that. So when you go to use it, put it on Facebook, put it on YouTube, whatever, you're not going to get away with not having that big old logo in the top right-hand corner of your video, unless you pay them some money, of course. And so their pricing is a couple of different ways. You can pay $5 a month to them, or you can pay annually at $40 a month, but there's no way to just buy that one-time fee and be done with it on that app. They have a subscription base to it. Now, if you're wanting to get into video and you think, hey, that's a very feasible thing for me to do, I think it very much so is a good price for what you can do for that. So I'm not telling you go get it, but I'm also saying you get what you pay for, and it's a great app. The other one that is available so that one's available to both iPhone and Android. Now, the next one down, I wanted to find at least another option. And I will just say right away, I could not find anything worth recommending on Android that was completely free. I could not find anybody saying, this is an app you can use, it's completely free, I recommend it. And I did a lot of searching because I wanted to recommend a free Android app to you guys, and I just couldn't find one. So the next one down is called Cyberlink Power Director. Again, free, but they put the watermark in it if you don't pay to play. Now, they're a little less expensive, and you can buy it for a one-time payment of $10, or you can do a subscription basis of $4 quarterly. It's kind of weird, but that's the way their structure is set up. And that is a fairly robust app. It would be fairly comparable to iMovie. I think iMovie might have a little bit more options and things you can do with it. But I for sure wanted to give you guys a couple of options that are out there. Again, sorry I could not find one for you Android users that could be completely free, such as iMovie, where it's a very good app and you don't have to pay for it. Again, those links there will link you into more of a video tutorial for you to sit and go through on your own time, at your own speed, of how to utilize those for edit. And so I didn't want to spend a lot of time in that, but I wanted to make sure that you knew some of the options that were out there. So, talking equipment. So, again, camera support's really important. You want to be able to have some kind of stability. That universal cell phone clip is this. This is that Amazon 60-inch tripod. And then, let's see if I can get this to open. I wanted to show you guys that gimbal and kind of what that looked like here. Hopefully that will launch pretty quickly. So I called that all camera support. Those are the different ways, obviously. There's other things that are out there, like they're the kind of cool, like spider-looking things where they kind of like wrap around your phone, and then you can wrap those around different things, and they hold your phone in place. Fairly limiting in some scenarios, but it might work in certain things. If you're a hunter and you want to have it up in a tree with you, and you want to be able to clamp that off however you want, I mean, there's options like that out there. So here's the handheld gimbal. You can see how you put your phone in it. And what that does is it just takes out a lot of the motion of your movement, and you can get some really cool like rising shots or sliding shots that just had a lot of production value because they're really smooth and stable. Okay, so that I just wanted to be able to make you guys aware that that equipment does exist. There's yes.
Down in Cuba last fall, and the guys from Minnesota Public Television had one of those gimbals. It packed awesomely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want one.
Yeah. So I shoot on a gimbal with our bigger cameras. I shot most of my footage today on a gimbal. It's just because you just have a lot of capabilities with it. So I don't have to move around whenever I'm on a gimbal. So sometimes I was just doing like super simple movements. But it was nice. I was like chasing one of these kids right down the hallway, and I like had it really low, and I was like running with him, and it's all just super smooth. Same kind of thing that you can do with the phone, and it just creates really great footage. And yes, they're very lightweight and packable, and they go in your bags really easy. Here's the Boya microphone. Again, we have all these Amazon links. They're going to be in the digital version if you would like that. What I like about this is the cost. This is less than $20 for this microphone, and the results, I got it on a whim. I saw like one other tutorial on it. I was like, I need to find some kind of equipment to be able to recommend. I wanted the length of cable. That was a big deal for me so that I could set something up and move away from the camera and still deliver my message. And so the cable length was a big deal. So I took a chance on a less than $20 risk, and that's why I'm recommending them now, because I think they're quality enough. What's cool about these two I didn't mention is they actually can plug into a regular camera. There's on here a camera, well, that'll explain a little better. Maybe, if it'll come up. Yeah, so you can actually switch that to work with like a DSLR camera or camcorder. It's not limited to just a smart device microphone as well. So it gives a little bit more versatility to that in case your equipment would ever change, or you already have that other kind of equipment and want to use both. So that's pretty nice.
And that goes in the computer too, right?
That's a great question. I've never actually tried to plug it. It should. I don't want to 100% say yes, but it should plug into the microphone jack on your computer. Mike, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it should work.
It should. Okay. So yeah, there you go. There's another option for you on how you can utilize that microphone. That is, yes, that is another option. I did talk about this in podcasting, where if you're doing audio content only, it's still a good option for you to be able to record audio content into your phone. And then wanted to kind of show you what I was talking about when it came to the condenser microphone that you can actually attach to your phone as you go. There's the one for iPhone, so you can see how that would work, where it just plugs right into your phone and then gives you this higher quality audio based on it being a nice microphone that's built inside of that little capsule there. So that's a difference there. But as you can see, that's a $150 microphone. And I did a lot of research and checking these out in tutorials, and I will say I was really impressed with the results. People were doing very, very straightforward tests, like from me to Cinda, about what the audio quality was like from just a phone, and then adding that, and it was night and day difference. Like, the audio quality didn't sound awful to me from the first internal camera, and when they showed me what it sounded like with the microphone plugged in, I was like, wow. It just gives it a lot more warmth and depth into your audio. It doesn't sound quite as tinny and high-pitched. So it adds a lot of quality. And they were also showing that with guitar, if you want to do anything music, and how much brighter and bigger that sound is with music, with something like this, rather than reliant on your internal microphone. So that's some of that equipment there. The Rode mic is the kind that plugs into the headphone jack and clips onto your phone. It's a $60 microphone. That's what it's saying. It's about almost $100 difference for the iPhone one. But quality-wise, I would still say the iPhone one, from what I noticed, did sound a little better. So you get what you pay for in some of that. But I thought the other one was very professional as well. And so there's some of the connectors and stuff. If you needed some of these, or if you wanted to get what turns your regular microphone into a smart microphone, I was just going to make sure you kind of were aware what kind of equipment you needed to do that. So it's something as simple as this, where you plug into that little black barrel there, and then that other end plugs into your phone and creates a smart device for you to record with. All right. Any questions on equipment before I keep rolling on? Because I want to just briefly talk about an interview setup, because that's a big part of video production is doing interviews. Does anybody have ideas that they're going to do interviews or on-camera stuff at all? Okay. Because there's a whole level of professionalism when it comes to setting up an interview that I wanted to just make sure everyone was a little bit aware of, and that is setting your camera at eye level with your subject, instead of sitting them down, like if I set Cinda there and then I put the camera up here. To shoot down at her like that it's just amateur. So try to get this tripod.
What if I look better at that angle?
That's your discretion. I will totally allow that. I'm just saying, as a professional, my recommendations are to get as eye level with your subject as possible. So whatever that takes for me to get that down to eye level with her, so that the camera, and specifically this angle, that's never flattering to anybody. So don't do that. Don't have your subject standing up. So like if it was interviewing me and I'm standing here and it's shooting up, get your phone eye level with your subject as much as possible. Okay, and then I just jumped. It said outdoors and stuff, but I kind of mentioned some of that. If you're going to shoot outdoors, avoid wind, and that's going to be hard to do. I understand. You understand. I live here too, and that is a difficult thing to do. But some of that you can help by positioning your person. If you have to shoot outside and it's windy and you can't avoid it, position them to where their back is blocking that wind. And so like if the wind was coming from here, you can see how this would be in a decent wind block because my body is blocking that wind. So you can do some things to avoid that. Now, you might have a tricky scenario where their back's to the wind, but the lighting's really bad. So you might have to just keep tweaking until you get it just right. And that's part of taking the time to set up your shot. But those are things definitely to consider. So use their body as a wind block. Clip the lavalier on the subject about where the second button from the top would be if they're wearing a button-up shirt. So you can kind of see my mic placement tonight about how I wouldn't clip it down here and I couldn't really go a whole lot higher. But this is about ideal for where the microphone should be placed. If you have a t-shirt, you can do it on the collar. I come down just a little bit just to give, I wanted to come out of the clothing just so I didn't get a bunch of rubbing and muffle sound when I clip it on. And then you want to hide the cable as much as possible. As you can see, I made sure I tucked all this away so it wasn't a big dangling cable that was distracting. Question?
You were talking about how the wind was blocking the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a way to check that? Because like on a normal camera and with the mic, there's like a bar that you can see
Oh, yes.
for the microphone, but I don't understand how you can check the microphone for the wind
Yeah.
on the
What?
cell phone.
What I would do, I'm glad you brought that up. Her question, and just because people wouldn't hear you through this, her question was, how do you know if you're getting decent audio quality basically as you're out shooting that, knowing that you're not getting a lot of wind? How do you monitor that? Again, that makes it a little tricky. In that Filmic Pro app that I talked about, I think you get audio meters. Most apps don't give you audio meters. But what I would do in that scenario is set it all up and try it and just do a little quick run through and then play that back and try to listen to it and see if you're getting a lot of wind noise or not. And so,
Yeah, because even in audio meters, if you just look at those audio meters,
Yeah.
you can get that up and down if the wind's blowing.
yeah, the audio meters will tell you a lot. They won't tell you everything. It's always good to try to monitor audio whenever possible, or do a test whenever possible. I always recommend that, because the other thing is you might have thought you got this plugged in all the way, and maybe you didn't. And if you don't, then you're not actually using this equipment. So it's good to do a quick little run through, play it back on your phone. One thing I always do, I need to make this maybe a note. In order to test and make sure I'm using this microphone or the microphone that I want to be using, when I do my test, I actually tap on it. Because you could say test, test, 1, 2, 3, and you can hear that through your other microphone, and it might fool you to think that you're getting it through here. When you tap on this, there's no doubt that because you hear this thud, 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 thud in your playback, you know you're using this microphone. And so there's no question after that. So great question. Thanks for bringing that up. It is good to monitor. It is good to review before you do a full-out interview out in the wind, and it's just really terrible. So now I jump into framing, and I was talking about the positioning and being eye level. And then I put the example there just so you can kind of see. We give our subjects what's called talk space. If I'm just doing a very standard interview with somebody, a professional setup would be their eyes are at the top of what we call the top third of the frame, and then they're looking off to one side. Sometimes maybe you want them to direct towards the camera, and if you do, I would just center them up as a very direct. But most of the time, if I'm talking to you and I want to just do an interview with you and get some soundbite stuff, I usually want you looking off camera at me, and we're just having a conversation, trying to keep you loose instead of making your subject focus in on try to maintain eye contact with your camera. And then sometimes you want to do that if you want to make a very direct message to an audience. It's good to direct that out. But if I'm having her talk about the highway junk gypsy market and I'm just doing sound bites about that, I don't necessarily want you looking right at the camera. I want to have a conversation with you and pull sound bites from that. So that's when a framing like that would be important to have them looking off camera. So again, get it eye level. And then if it was Cinda there that I was talking to, I would probably get right about here straight with her, kind of somewhat similar straight to her shoulders. Again, eye level. And then the other trick is, I don't want to stand necessarily up here because her eye level is going to come up and out of frame. I want her looking straight across the frame. So I need to be in a chair having this conversation with you so you're not looking up. Okay? So that's another thing that I've made that mistake, and I'll never make it again, because once you get into post-production and your subjects are like doing this out of frame, it looks so weird. So just get eye level also with your subject in order to have that conversation so that they're looking eye level all the way across the frame, as you can see the gentleman in the picture there. And so I don't even think I put that maybe in there. Yeah, so they're looking off and speaking. Most of the time the interviewee is off camera, and you don't necessarily always hear this person. So what's nice is to ask her to repeat her answer or her question into the answer. So I'd say, why is the sky blue? You'd want her to respond, well, I think the sky is blue because, and so that we cut off the interview question and actually just get the interview answer. Now, your subject will hardly ever remember to do that. You can even ask them in the very beginning, hey, try to reiterate the question into your answer. And okay. And then you ask them a question, they'll just take off. You say, oh, hang on. Nobody's going to hear me. They don't have any context to what you're talking about. So back up just a second and answer that question ask that question into your answer, kind of. So once everything's tapped, hold on. Oh, yeah. So then we would want to lock focus in on her and exposure in on her because she's not moving. Yeah, question.
Don't forget that when you're editing, if you take off one word off the beginning of the interview or one word off of the end, you could actually change the entire meaning
Yeah.
of the interview to where it's where you want it instead of where the interview person wants it.
Right. You have a lot of manipulation control as an editor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's no doubt. Okay. Let me see the picture. Okay. So again, set your subject. Take control over manual focus, take control over manual exposure, sit down, have a great interview with them. You're going to get great results from that. Again, lighting is important. We kind of hit on this already, so we're not going to go a lot. But avoid placing your subject in front of a bright window, because then all it will want to do is expose for that, and your subject will be really dark. I say the phone will have adjustment issues, which is no doubt. But if you have a nice big window, try to utilize that as a light source. So when I shoot video stuff in here, I don't know if any of you saw it on the Facebook page when I was telling you guys I was excited for the class on Monday. I was sitting right about there because all that light was flooding in right here. So if I could do the same video and I could go sit over there, well, we have a lot of big windows over here, but I could go sit in a location that doesn't have a lot of great light, and I'd be doing myself a disservice because I can utilize that light source to my advantage instead of using it to my disadvantage, where if I would have turned all this around and shot towards that way, it would have been a completely different video altogether because you would never see me in there. So utilize that light source to your advantage. And yeah, and I already said it, when you're outside, avoid looking directly into the sun, and because your subjects are going to be squinting, and avoid shooting in very low light areas. I already covered all of that. So questions? Yes.
In that picture, the background is a lot not clear like he is.
Yeah.
And when you do the video, when you tap on that squared person, it should.
It'll do some of that. Depending on how good your camera is and how good your camera app is, it will start to say, okay, she's in focus, so that means that everything else can. Yeah, because you can get more control. Because what you can do in that, I won't go into a ton of depth about that, but your lower f-stop, if you know anything about cameras, the lower your f-stop, the better depth of field that you can create. And so when you have some control over that in a different app, you can drop that f-stop a little bit to create that effect. And that's called depth of field. So we have this background that's all nice and blurry, and we don't have to put a whole lot of emphasis to it, and it brings our subject really nice and focus, and that's what we want. So great question, and that is how you achieve that with phones. And make sure you give your subject plenty of depth, because there's all that stuff that's quite a bit behind him. Whereas if I put somebody right up against something, it's going to be very hard for me to create any depth because the background's right there. So give yourself as much depth as you can between your subject and the background to achieve some of that look. Yes?
What do you not want to wear that makes it, when you're on camera, that is less machine over 3-dimensional?
Okay. Question was, what do you not want to wear as clothing when you're on camera that might mess with the camera? A lot of tiny little lines, so little checkered shirts. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah, Jeffrey.
I was watching your show. I don't please let them anymore.
Yeah. Because
Just don't look at it. Just listen. Just don't.
it's all about how the camera is capturing that image, because it makes little lines. And if you have a shirt that does not mesh well with that, you can get some really hard stuff to look at.
Okay, other times if you turn, it'd go all the way.
Yeah. So avoid the little stripes or little checkers. Used to be where you had to avoid really bright reds because those would bleed, but that's not near as much of the case anymore. So it's mostly that, and of course if you're going to do anything that you think you're going to use and do it on green screen, don't wear green. And I've had that issue as well. And it's kind of cool looking because you can just, whatever you wear can just disappear and you're just floating, but you don't necessarily want that for the production that you're doing. Yeah, unless you're wanting that effect. So great question about clothing. Any other questions? Solids are good. And solids that don't match the same color as your background. So if you're on a black background, probably don't wear a black shirt because then there's no depth there. You just kind of get washed out. So contrast in those are good. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just gonna point out, make sure you know who's in your background, because like if you go and interview certain people at like a convention or something, if you've got famous people in the background, they'll throw a little hissy fit.
Okay.
Make sure you know who's in the background.
Okay. So yeah, if you're somewhere where you don't want to have any kind of issues with people coming back for you at a video, try to turn your subject to a point where that's never going to be an issue for you. Now save yourself a lot of headache in the long run. So, I almost forgot. I did want to point out I just got this in today. I'm going to be experimenting with it this week. It's kind of another way to bring professionalism to your smartphone video. This is basically just a cage mount for my phone to go in. What's really cool is I can start putting different lenses in front of my camera app. Because once I line this in, you just take a second to line up this hole just right. And once you do, I can just pop this in, and I can get really good. This is a macro lens, so I can get really, really close to subjects, and they'll still be really crisp. So I'm going to be experimenting and playing with this just a little bit. Sorry, Siri, I didn't need you. I'm looking into some telephoto lenses. Have not found one that I've wanted to pull the trigger yet based on all the other reviews. I spend hours on this. I'm laying in bed. I'm like, review. But because I just want to know, like what's out there so I can recommend something good. I have not found anything yet that I say that's a good telephoto lens to try and invest in. If I get to that point, I will recommend that. Yeah. I can tell you're not going to get anything that's going to reach out there really great yet. There's some, you can look them up online. There's some really big ones, but those are all getting horrible reviews. I'm seeing, the best ones so far I'm seeing is about a 2 times or maybe 3 times zoom. There's like one that's like an 18 times zoom. It's like a big old thing, and people are like, this is crap, don't buy it. So I'm still trying to invest into that. But what's nice is also you can see that I can attach higher quality production microphones onto this rig. I can actually get other abilities to attach like lighting and other types of things. It has all these different like screw mounts on there that I can start attaching like lights and different things onto this device. And it's also made to be able to kind of run and gun with. So it gives you this little grip handle, which is pretty cool. And so I'm just now experimenting with it. Again, came up in some of my research for this class as a way of increasing production value with your device. So I thought I better get it and try it out and see if I can recommend it to you guys. But all the reviews I've seen on this, it's called the Beast Grip Pro. And this is like a $165 kit that comes with the lens and the cage. Beast Grip. I didn't end up getting it put on there yet because I didn't want to put it on there because I didn't necessarily want to recommend it just yet because I haven't got a chance to try it out. But I'm excited to try it out this week. I'm actually going to Newton on Wednesday, and I'll be shooting a ton of video up there specifically with my phone, and I'll get a good run through with it on Wednesday. So, yeah, pretty excited about that. I love the idea of being able to change out lens capability with the phone because that's obviously one of the big limitations. We're shooting on a device like that. They actually have a device, it's called a DF mount, DOF, depth of field mount, so I can attach Canon lenses and other big glass to it. That's a $250 mount but it'll screw right into this, and then I can put like my Canon 24-105 lens that's like this big around on this device, and it'll look really good. I've seen some really great results. I'm just not pulling the trigger on a $250 mount yet. But that might be down the road as these cameras improve and these phones improve, because like you think about live streaming and that kind of stuff, it's easiest to live stream through a device like this than any other device. You put a good glass on there, you could be doing some pretty good live streaming stuff just through your device. So
Is that adjustable for like an iPad? Or
they have different ones for iPads. This one's specifically made for phones, but you can see find a bigger cage mount. I don't know if B-Script themselves makes one for iPads, but I know there's markets out there for bigger devices. Yeah. Any other questions? I want you guys to feel free to ask those, but I'm pretty much done with you, and I'll be around if anybody wants to talk any more details about this kind of stuff. Email me if you want the digital version of this so that you can have all the use of those links that I had in the outline. Okay? Otherwise, thanks for coming.